Greetings and salutations, this is Imperator Vespasian bringing you our Black Templar Space Marine army. The Black Templars, for those of you who do not know much about the Black Templars, they're one of the oldest chapters. They're a second founding chapter, although as first company of the Imperial Fists, they were fully functional as a separate entity throughout the early years of the Imperium. During the Heresy, they pretty much operated independently of the rest of the Imperial Fists, especially the latter part, because Sigmarsson, the guy in charge of the first company, had fallen out with Dawn, and so they weren't on speaking terms. Dawn refused to accept him as one of his sons, and there were lots of arguments and stuff. Long story, I'll cut it short. The Black Templars operated on the sort of outer edges of the solar system and were ordered to stay there fighting. They again disobeyed orders, which they'd already done, which is why they'd fallen out with Dawn, and they flew back into the solar system during the point where Horus used arcane powers to teleport his battle fleet to the skies of Terra. The Imperial Fists were being overrun, and then suddenly Sigmarsson arrived and saved the day, which kind of made Dawn look like a bit of an idiot. But that's all by the by. After the Heresy, it was decided to split all the chapters up and break all the chapters up into what would become the second founding. Dawn refused. He wanted to keep the chapters extant, and it led to a few problems. Rabute Guilliman denounced Dawn as a traitor because he's an idiot, and Dawn relented and decided to get half of his chapter killed fighting the Iron Warriors, just to thin out his own ranks, so then he could found second founding chapters with what was left. And the first company became the Black Templars. They never chose a homeworld. The Black Templars operate from fleets, and they have the largest of all Space Marine fleets. Well, I would say as a chapter they have the largest of all fleets of the Space Marines. However, you have Rabute Guilliman, always the fool, who has his own personal battle fleet around the Macragge Empire. Also, there's the Space Wolves maintain their own battle fleet as well, which is so good it can take on the Imperium and win. So, yeah, there's a lot of moving of goalposts when it comes to organising Space Marine chapters and what they're actually allowed to have. The Black Templars themselves do not particularly stick to the codex. A lot of chapters don't, but generally a lot of chapters do, or the ones who don't sort of skirt around the edges of forming a chapter. Some chapters have a large amount of scouts, like the Ultramarines, of course, are famed for having large amounts of scout marines, which are not legally classed as marines on the books, and so they actually have thousands of these scout marines. They also have marines on ships who they don't classify as marines, so through a lot of careful bookwork, the Ultramarines are able to work out that they only have 1,000 marines and that's it. In fact, they probably have 30 to 40,000 on call, but they're all over the Macragge Empire, and they're stationed aboard ships, and they're stationed everywhere else, so they're not actually one complete chapter. It's all very complicated, and with the advent of Imperial Secundus, Rabute Guilliman effectively became the emperor in all but name of the Eastern Empire. Then when he finally got to Terra, he made himself the ruler of the empire. So I would assume that the Black Templars themselves would have the same kind of layout. They are ship-based army. All their troops operate on ships. but I don't think there are 1,000 of them. They're way more than that. For instance, Black Reach, they landed is it 900 Space Marines, which theoretically would be nearly their entire chapter, and yet that was just the first company which fought there. There was another company fighting further south, down the river. I don't know how big that one is, we never really get told in the books. But there was also at least 2 to 3 more companies in space fighting. So do the math, and you're probably looking at least 3,000 Marines in a combat position during a campaign, at least. But again, they don't have a home world, so they have fortress monasteries, and they have fortress monasteries positioned on every single world they conquer. And they've been conquering worlds for 10,000 years. They've been on a permanent crusade for 10,000 years to prove their loyalty to the Empire. And that's a lot of fortress monasteries. And I know some fortress monasteries may only have 10 Space Marines, but if that's 1,000 worlds with 10 Space Marines, you've already gone over your codex. But hey, who cares? There's a lot more I could go into, but some of it is unit specific, such as the Sword Brethren, who are these chaps here, Grimaldus himself, and various other things. So what I'll do, I'll break that into smaller videos because I don't want to make this too long. So the basic, there's a couple of differences between this Space Marine Legion and other legions. First of all, they do not have librarians. Now, this has changed with the new books, with the, what is it, the not Dark Empire, whatever the new book's called. It has changed a little. They have accepted Primaris Marines, and they have, now they're not allowed to have, the chapter as a whole is not allowed to have librarians. They refuse to have librarians. Just like Dawn himself, he actually imprisoned his own librarians. He only let them out of prison during the heresy because his ship was overrun by demons. And finally he said, you know what, these demons are real. We're going to have to let out my librarians. And they got the librarians out to fight. The first company never had librarians, and which is who these became, the Black Templars. And so to this day, they do not have librarians. However, with the intervention of Rabute Guilliman during the Indominus Crusade, the Black Templars, being fleet-based, were of course on the Rift, trying to keep a passage open with the Empire, and a lot were also fighting on one of the moons of Macragge. It's complicated, but they were there anyway, and there was so they were helping out the local forces, and that's when Rabute Guilliman arrives, and he brings with him the Primaris Marines. And of all the Space Marine chapters, well, not all, but of most of the Space Marine chapters, the Black Templars accepted the Primaris without any question. They didn't have any trouble adopting Primaris Marines, and that went on to introduce the Primaris Psychers, the Primaris Librarians. So they were able to then have librarians in their army, but they're Primaris librarians, so they're able to sort of get around that bit of doctrine. So you can now field librarians if you do a Black Templar army. I know a lot of people back in the day when people collected Black Templars, a lot of people sort of shied away from having Black Templars, or maybe would only have a squad or something to go with another army, because you couldn't have librarians, so you couldn't really have a proper Space Marine army. Librarian is sort of the linchpin of most large battles. You positioning your librarians properly to support your troops, but now you can do it. Now, as far as I understand, I'm going by the books now, as far as I understand, only Chaplain Brocas Brother Chaplain Brocus is the only company to have Primaris Marines in it. But I would assume other companies have Primaris Marines, but the only one that actually has Primaris Marines is Brocus's chapter. But given that the chapter accepted Primaris quite easily, I would assume that all of the chapters have Primaris on board, but I'm not entirely sure. So the organisation of the army, this is just a small combat platoon. Because I've only just started the army, I haven't filled it out with troops yet. I've only got 2 squads of standard Marines, a command squad, which is Squad Grimaldus from the Black Reach books, Terminator Assault Company. Oh no, it's a standard Terminator Tactical Company. 1 squad of Sword Brethren. I have more to do, but I'm converting some existing figures to turn them into Sword Brethren. It's a long story, don't worry about it. Then we have Grimaldus himself, the Emperor's Champion. Every crusade has an Emperor's Champion, and they're always selected from the Black Templars. My chapter master, who is completely awesome and hasn't been killed whatsoever in battle yet, although the champion dies all the time. A glorious dreadnought, crusader, land raider, which really fits in with the theme of the army. More about that later. A razorback and 2 troop transports to carry my sword brethren around, basically. So the organisation the organisation of the army book-wise is you have 5 companies in total. Now a company is about 400 Marines, roughly, from what I've been able to work out. Black Reach, is it Black Reach? Am I getting that? Yeah, I think it's Black Reach. There seems to be a lot of throwing around of numbers, and it's not entirely. I'm not entirely sure if it's technically canon or whether or not they're including other forces with them. So say that you have 900 troops in one company. Are they all Space Marines? Are they Space Marines from different chapters who've been lent? Are they your naval troops? The Black Templars have a large naval contingent to their army, but they're basically Imperial Guard. So are they included in the numbers? We don't know, but we'll just run by what we have here, which is we have a household company, which is the company of the master of the Grand Marshal. Then we have the household company bears the name of the Grand Marshal, whoever he is at the moment. I think they now have a new Grand Marshal, because I don't think the Grand Marshal survived today. Then you have Brocas, the Righteous. He's a Brother Chaplain. He's the guy who embraced the Primaris Marines. That is typically a close combat chapter. They're more sort of assault troops based. They go in for predators and stuff like that rather than your big land raiders. Then you have Bardolph, the bearer of the sacred bones. These guys, the company name is the bearer of the sacred bones. Led by Brother Bardolph. That is a heavy tank unit, so that they go in for sort of lots and lots of land raiders and stuff like that. So they're really a ground-based force to take on big monsters and stuff. Then you have the 3rd company, which is the Emperor's Justice, which is a good one, led by a guy called Setback. I don't know much about it, so I'm not sure how that particular unit is arranged. then you have the bringer of the true word, bringers of the true word, and that's led by Darius. They are assault troops entirely. They're orbital drop troops, so they don't have tanks. They may have the odd predator that can be dropped by drop pod, but they are primarily jetpack troops, assault bikes, anything that lands. Basically, they're the first troops that get sent in an orbital drop. And also, if there's some sort of rebellion going on, Darius is sent in to just take out the high command of whoever's rebelling, sort of cutting the head off the chicken. And that's how they're organised. They're organised entirely around drop troops, so there's no Terminators. They're all drop troops, whereas your Terminators are really in Bardolph's command, sort of heavy, close quarter fighting. So yeah. Next thing is, or last thing, I won't make the video go on too long, it's already gone on long enough before I actually go into the units. There is a real difference in the outlook of playing this Space Marine chapter. And that's that there's the Imperial cult, and 90% of Imperial Guard believe the Emperor is God, right? Or a God. And so they worship the Emperor as the God Emperor. Space Marines don't. Space Marines think Imperial citizens are a little bit silly. And Space Marines know that the Emperor is a man, albeit a perpetual. But he is a living being. He's not a god. They don't believe he's a god. And they just let the peasants get along with it. Now, the Black Templars actually believe that the Emperor is a living god. So they follow the Imperial Creed. They are highly religious, and they believe the Emperor is God. Yeah, so you're going to have, in time to come, book-wise, at the moment, Rabute Guilliman, who is the Emperor of mankind, or the steward, a High Protector, is it? Lord Protector of mankind in the name of the Emperor. He's not, of course, religious, he's a Primarch. And he does not like the ecclesiarchy, he doesn't like the church much, and he has come into problems with the church. He has priests around him who he tries to guide him through how the church politically works. Because even though he is emperor in name, the ecclesiarchy has considerable power behind it. And if the ecclesiarchy declared Guilliman a traitor, or excommunicate him, there's a large very, very large portions of the Empire would easily rebel against him. Now, Guilliman can rely on the Marines to back him. He is a Primarch, he is a Space Marine, he is one of the first Space Marines. Guilliman will have no trouble getting support from the rest of the Space Marine chapters. Not these guys. These guys have fought alongside Guilliman, but these guys do not believe, well, at the moment, these guys believe that Guilliman is the son of the Emperor, therefore has a right to rule. But if the Church goes against Guilliman, chapters like this, the Crusading chapters, so the Black Templars, there's one of the Ultramarine founding chapters as well, who believe that the Emperor is God, they could quite easily take the side of the Ecclesiarch against Guilliman. So in the future, in the books, if they're good at writing, when they are, if they get the writers who wrote, I'm thinking Guy Haley, who wrote the heresy novels, and they keep those writers on to carry the lore forward, we could see a schism between the Empire, and that could be really interesting, because you could get loyalist Space Marines fighting loyalist Space Marines, but neither side are traitors, they're fighting each other over religious doctrine. And that could become quite an interesting way for the future of the universe to go. And I have seen there is some of that coming out, particularly in the new book I'm reading, which is one of the books with Gilman in it. You can see this sort of beginning. And it's also expanded the rogue traders a little more as well. So we could see interesting things in the future. But this video has gone on way too long, so I will leave you with that. I'll put a slideshow at the end. I think I might have already put some pictures up for you. So that's it. That's the introduction to our Black Templar army. One of the more one of the more odd Space Marine armies that you can get. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Imperator Vespasian. Please click like, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave any comments in the comments section. If I can get into the comments, I will answer. It's not easy getting into the comments sometimes. I have issues. But thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.